Thank you very much for inviting me to be the first speaker. I actually practiced this in Korean, but it takes 1 hour to go through the slides. I only have 15 minutes. This is supposed to be a positive event. So why am I starting with an image of trash? Because there's a fundamental dilemma at the heart of Biennale culture today. Architecture's greatest minds gather every 2 years, and then they throw away entire buildings. This is a kind of a demonstration in front of the Venice Biennale, where this artist took barges of trash in front of the Venice Biennale. Interestingly, every Biennale starts with a grand vision, a new curator, a new way to outdo the last one. And then the result is an endless cycle from idea to waste. And if you add up all the major biennales, they could easily fill the Yuksam building. The last Seoul Biennale was also guilty. The otherwise interesting facade examples, they became large-scale trash that could not be recycled. And so they tried to donate some of these exhibits to the Susong Biennale, and we would have gladly taken them. But they were impossible to dismantle. So these pavilions became actually a kind of wasted effort. So what biennales actually need is a continuity with the past, ideas that connect to each other, to the public, and to the longer arc. The goal is the idea of the art museum at the city scale, not temporary gestures that don't add up. Here are our previous directors, Professors Chun Choi and Youngmin Kim. And from the very beginning, the Susong International Biennale has structured a very interesting collaboration between architecture and landscape, because the city is never just about buildings, it's the spaces and ecologies those buildings must integrate with. And here's what that looks like in practice. Instead of projects built to be discarded, the Susong Biennale creates permanent public space. This is the Floating Hills project by Office Pak Kim Landscape Architects, and they'll be in the session tomorrow. And permanent doesn't actually mean conceptually shallow. The assumption that temporary Biennale installations can carry stronger ideas is one that I'd like to challenge directly. So what's interesting is that Park Kim's stage works on multiple conceptual layers simultaneously. It lowers the ambient summer temperature, it activates the waterfront, and creates new intersections between performance art and the city. And what also makes the Susong Biennale different is its competitive process. It's through this process that we attract world-class designers. One of the interesting things is that the slides are actually out of order. It's okay. The previous slide here shows a project by Junya Ishigami, who will present by video tomorrow, or today. And the interesting thing about this project, why it's conceptually strong, it connects the waterfront to the city, but also it makes a new kind of pedestrian way that integrates with the entire city at large through connecting with the new way to Turanlo, the major thoroughfare through the district. And then again, we have world-class projects that join the competition, including Westgate from the Netherlands and D-Lim Architects. These proposals were exhibited, published, and now are part of the city's permanent idea of archives. And there are similar smaller scale projects that the Biennale has supported. Here are two winning schemes that amplify the natural sites that surround them, while gently bringing in public scale to the edge of these important conservation zones. There's Landscape of Coexistence on the left and Healing Stone on the right. And these projects, they don't intrude upon the natural areas, but bring the public in coexistence with it. Then there's also our pavilion program. It's comparable in ambition to other international biennales, but with a critical difference. These are permanent pavilions. They occupy exactly that threshold that defines Susong, the edge between city and nature. We have the Kumho Ecological Observatory on the right and the Susong Seesaw by Soil on the right side. And then Supra by So Architects, which we see on the left. They're a firm from Istanbul, and they won an International Art Daily Award recently for this pavilion. And what's interesting about it is that not only does it create a place of rest and shade, it collects rainwater to integrate with the landscape around it. And also, Sosobyeol by DA Architecture gives pedestrians a new way to experience Seoul's extraordinary water reservoirs. So that was the immediate past. Now we have the present, the Susung Biennale of 2026, where I am one of the co-directors, and the theme is Living Ground. We chose this deliberately as a continuation of the 2024 Biennale theme, which was called Relational Field. Both expand the relationship between culture and nature, and again, my co-director is landscape architect Ayeon Kim from Seoul Shiripdae. And here's a little background of our theme. Susung as core is a city of stunning water bodies, and these lakes and water bodies shape everything. The result is a city in constant dialogue between nature and the built environment. Susung in many ways is the living definition of living ground. And living ground is both literal and metaphorical. The ground is not a passive, inert surface. It's a living section. It's a source of sustenance, and it's the interface between earth and sky. Living ground is both a noun and a verb, the shared ground where culture and nature converge, interact, and evolve. And it's inherently cross-disciplinary. So in living ground, architecture is landscape, landscape is architecture. And we're inviting participants to explore that intersection through the lens of ecology. The concept opens towards a broader set of keywords, all operating in the space between ecology, culture, and the city. So living ground is also about networks, natural and human, that have coexisted and co-evolved over millennia. But we do have to be critical because human infrastructure has taken precedence over the very ground it depends on. So living ground asked us to reverse this polarity. Susung can now become a global stage, demonstrating through built permanent work that it means to sustain a city through culture and ecology together. And that sustenance has a mascot. I think Doobie is in the room somewhere, but Doobie represents this kind of fragile but vital landscape that Susung is committed to protecting. And even as Daegu is dense and it's an urban area, there is remarkable ecological diversity here. The Biennale asks then, how do we nurture this diversity? And just as the 2024 Biennale identified specific sites for permanent cultural infrastructure, Living Ground has its own focus sites, each a deliberate convergence of architecture and landscape. So one of our flagship projects is the Jinbatgol Wood-Friendly City, and here Living Ground addresses material origins directly through the renewability of wood as both structure and symbol. Kengo Kumo Associates won the competition with a community center that uses timber for both structure and skin, a building that is its material. The competition also drew stunning proposals from Terroir in Australia, Solto Jibin, and Smart Architecture in Korea. Each team made a distinct argument about what it means to build sustainably with wood. Another key site is the Turan Art Park, located within an older residential neighborhood near Susung Lake. The German firm Topotech's winning scheme imagines the park as an urban wilds with a social hammock hovering above. Nature and culture are in the closest proximity together without compromising each other. And other international competition proposals created their own essential intersections between landscape and the city. We have A+T Studio from China on the left and Jamie Studio on the right from the US. And like 2024, we have our own pavilion program, which returns to another site, Oksuji, that defines Susung threshold, the delicate line between human-made and the natural. There's two schemes, two sites by STPMJ and Alive Us that bring people closer to the waterfront without transgressing it. We'll also have a series of micro world-class galleries that will also anchor the emerging Yeonho district. Borough Ole Sheeran from Hong Kong weaves pedestrian and networks with nature. Ome from the Netherlands frames and focuses views and activities towards the landscape. And SKM Architects from Korea creates a porous assembly between earth and sky that will change as the district grows. We also have the Naegwan public restroom that redefines what public infrastructure can be, both visually and ecologically, enhancing rather than merely being functional. It's designed by Iroje Architects, and it creates an elemental building and landscape that speak directly to each other. So through a Biennale event, we invited designers to become fellow inhabitants of living ground, not just to produce separate objects for a temporary exhibition, but to embed themselves in a specific community and ecology of Susong. And there were no winners or losers. Instead, there's a shared inquiry and discussion. What does it mean to define cultural architecture and landscape as fundamentally ecological under the theme of living ground? And Susong already has, as we all know, a collection of well-loved cultural facilities, but they remain isolated destinations, nodes, not yet a network. So in 2024, Relational Field created the first layer of this network. And in 2026, Living Ground builds upon it. And like all great cities, the Art Museum's city concept grows from the past into the present, until the city's cultural and historical and ecological layers become a single living network. Now, what about the future? We talked about the past and the present. The future. One of the most exciting parts of the Susong Biennale is the international studios, where global universities collaborating with local universities visit Susong and propose the next vision for the area. Earlier this year, students and professors came from all around the world. They presented the work, and we heard about Susong's future directly from Mayor Kim Tae-kwon. And there were hundreds of fascinating ideas that were shared and will be exhibited this fall. And my own graduate lab at SNU proposed a multimodal UAM hub along the Kumho River that reimagines that post-military site as a cultural and economic hub. It shifts the emphasis of highway-based urbanism to ecological modes of transport so that the nature of the adjacent hills and water can coexist with the city. The future is also about children. This Biennale, we're asking young children to design birdhouses. How can Living Ground embrace every species in the city? The response has garnered remarkable interest from the public and press on how children are inventing ways to sustain living ground for our collective future. And then this is the last slide. Finally, the dedicated pavilion for the opening of Living Ground exhibit, which opens on the 27th of October, was designed by local architecture firm Architecton, and it uses wood elements that will be returned to the local supplier after the exhibit closes. So every connection is designed for assembly and disassembly, which minimizes the waste of materials and ideas. And so we hope this kind of ecological thinking creates and restores a kind of idea of the art museum city in Susong. And we hope that it can become a global example of how biennales can become much more sustainable and more impactful. Thank you.